Sportsocracy.
Shake and bake!
Beer City's best sports talk.
It is gross.
Just earlier.
They are mature, actually. You just have to get to know them better.
Your lunchtime dose of dumbassery. Live from the Ingalls studio.
It is ESPN Asheville, 92.9 FM, 880 AM, 1400. We're heard everywhere on the iHeartRadio app and the Sportsocracy scene everywhere in the Ingalls studio. On YouTube, go to thesportsocracy.com, click the live video link, subscribe to the channel. That way you can join us in the chat and get your thoughts in on the CFP screwjob. College Football Playoff Committee yesterday releasing all of the matchups, right? The top four. Who just missed? We were watching live. We streamed it on YouTube yesterday. You can go back and see the video on our stream.
If you want the unfiltered version, that's the one you're looking for.
We cannot play any of that on FCC-controlled airwaves
Not
because
one
Jeremy
sentence.
was just absolutely livid, and I cannot disagree with the anger. I completely understand where you're coming from. You should be ticked off. Every Florida State fan right now should be mad because you have told us for years if we do everything in our power as a Power 5 team and beat everybody on our schedule, then we are in. It's an automatic bid. That's always been the case.
That's the fair argument.
It is the fair argument.
I don't do fair. Fair happens one time a year. It shows up at the Ag Center in your town. It has Ferris wheels, funnel cakes, and clowns. And if that's the argument that you're trying to give, you look like the latter. I'm not playing the fair argument. I'm not. Here's what I'm playing.
Mm-hmm.
The unbelievable inconsistency. Let me ask you a question. I value you to be a smartman.
Thank you.
And you know college football. Who are the four best teams in college football right now?
Four best teams in college
Your opinion.
football
I'm not
are-
asking for any. I don't need any analytics. I don't need any justification. Your Ohos watching football tells you the four best teams in college football are who?
Michigan, Georgia, Washington, and Alabama.
Okay. I don't disagree with you in any way. I don't disagree with what you said in any way. Unfortunately, that's not what we got.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me ask you another question. Who is the best team in college football right now? And you can use any metric that you want. You can use the eye test. You can use the resume. You can use whatever you want.
I believe it's Michigan.
I don't. I don't believe it's Michigan. If it's resume, then it's Washington because they have clearly the best resume, which is why they're two. If it's on eye test, I'm still not sure that it's not Georgia. If it's not Georgia, it's Alabama because that's the only team that's beaten them. I could also pass the eye test that Washington was so good against Oregon that I could make it them. Here's what I can't do. I can't go on resume. I can't go on eye test. I can't go on any of it to get Texas into this playoff. None of it. Now, that leads to the question of, well, then why is Texas here? Because you could not have Texas out and Alabama in, which tells me that the 13 of you that got into this room have a little problem that's usually best solved by a good old-fashioned Viagra because you don't have no huevos.
Oh.
Because that's what you didn't want to do. You couldn't leave Alabama out. And you know what? I'm going to try to be a big man here and say to the Alabama fans that were listening to our stream yesterday, I apologize if maybe my vitriol was aimed at you because I have no problem that Alabama's in this. I really don't. You lost to Texas. That is a categoric fact. That is like saying it is Monday. That is like saying the sky's blue, grass is green, and water's wet. You lost to Texas. That has to count for something. I get it. What I told all of you from the first release of this poll is you have painted yourself into a corner, and there is absolutely no way for you to come out of this unless you get smart between now and week 14. You didn't. Here's why I say that. So the argument now is that Florida State was kept out because their quarterback was a third-string quarterback in a championship game. Okay. Well, you do get that quarterback's not who would play in the playoff. It'd be Tate Rodemaker. And, if only we knew, if only we could possibly have known what you thought about that, because you put out rankings every week. Wouldn't that be such an absolute act of God? Oh, wait, you do. And you already said Florida State was better than Texas and Florida State was better than Alabama. Alabama goes in and gets a big win. Okay, put them in. I don't care. I officially do not care. You put Florida State at 4. You said going into the conference championship game that was one of the 4 best teams in the country. They did absolutely nothing to change that. But they only had 220 yards offense. So did Michigan. The team you put at 1 and said that's the best team in the country. I don't care who you put in. Just be some form of consistent instead of being 13 morons, including one that's a grown man named Boo.
0 lies in any of that. And you're absolutely right. You can't tell me that we ended up with the 4 most deserving teams.
You can't tell me we wound up with the 4 anything.
Exactly.
There is no adjective that you can put into this and say you did anything.
I don't know. No, there
What
is.
is it?
I think there is. And I think the only one, or the closest one that I can come to, is that we ended up with the 4 biggest brands that we could sell.
Washington's a bigger brand than Florida State.
You couldn't. Well, no.
Sell that to me, I dare you.
No, you couldn't. But there was also no way that you could put Florida State in over Washington. You couldn't have argued that.
I agree. I also firmly believe there's no way you could have put Texas in over Florida State. Alabama's not the one that I have a qualm with.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and here's why. Because you said that what happened earlier in the season doesn't matter. Resume doesn't matter. You said that, not me. This was your claim, is that the resume doesn't matter. It's who are the 4 best teams right now. Did you watch Texas over the last month? Your claim to fame here is that you beat an Oklahoma State team. Now, let me because my name's on the door and I'm allowed to, let me tell you a couple things about this Oklahoma State team. That win was so good. Oh, good God, we must put Texas in. Do you understand that they were down 24-6 to a BYU team that's not even bowl eligible at home? That was 2 weeks ago. They got beat 45-3 by Central Florida, and that's the win that you're telling me is so good? You had Florida State ahead of them last week.
Mm-hmm.
Last week. Not 6 weeks ago, not 6 months ago, not in the preseason. 7 damn days ago, you said this team was better than Texas. They beat an inferior team. Florida State, Louisville is better than Oklahoma if you have an IQ above salad dressing. They beat the better team, and then because you had to get Alabama in and you had run yourself into this corner, you had to screw Florida State.
Mm-hmm.
There is absolutely nothing about that makes sense. If you had come out, if Boo Corrigan had sat in front of that committee, sat in front of that camera, and said, you know what? We think these are the 4 best teams, and here is why. That is not what he did. That is not what he did under any circumstances. If you had come out and said, we don't want to have a Florida State team that's playing their backup quarterback, playing in this because we got embarrassed last year by TCU and had to do media buybacks because the sponsors were so pissed that that game was that bad, I would have even respected that. I would have thought you were a Neanderthal that was 100% run by the money, and that's not who should be picking this, but at least I would have respected it. You take the team with the weakest resume, which is Michigan, and it's not close.
Mm-hmm.
Your second best win is over a team that can't score, and you made them 1. Why? Because that's your opinion. Well, here's the thing, and I learned this from a very early age. Opinions are like keister holes, and most of them stink. And this one stunk to absolutely the end of the world. And you will never convince me that it doesn't. If you had followed any rational train of thought, and now let me, I'm not looking at the comments because I willfully did not want to be sidetracked here because I willfully know that I will say something I'm not allowed to if I get sidetracked.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not telling you Florida State, as they sit, is one of the 4 best teams in the country. What I'm telling you is that they have hit everything in front of them. They have been told they were one of the top 4 teams in the country. Your opinion, not mine. Your opinion. They were one of the top 4 teams in the country, and they did absolutely nothing to change that. They went into a neutral site in a conference championship game and absolutely dominated a team that is pretty good. Not great. They're not a great team. Louisville's not a great team. Guess what? Neither is Oklahoma State.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted to let Alabama in, that's fine. Grow a pair. Put Alabama in, say they had the best win, and be done with it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Adam Black earlier today said, I wouldn't have this same gumption if it wasn't my team. Let me just tell you, A, that's not true. And nothing I've done over the course of 4 years would make you think that. I can get mad about anything. I'm not sure Georgia doesn't have a better case than Florida State does. I'm not sure Georgia doesn't have a better case than Florida State does. They told you, in spite of you beating nobody, none of it mattered.
Mm-hmm.
You were the best team in the country. You lost to a team that they value to be one of the best teams in the country, and you were a complete afterthought. You were the team that we didn't even acknowledge you. We put you on the screen beforehand because you were so far away that it didn't matter. Here's what you've done in all effect. You have basically told me that the regular season doesn't matter. There's another sport that did that. If you recall, I told you a long time ago there's another sport that did that same thing. It was Major League Baseball. Weird. Over time, this died. Now, let me tell you, I've been pretty good, I think, historically calling what was going to happen in college football. I was ahead of the NIL thing. I was ahead of the transfer portal. I've been ahead of every bit of this because I'm not a moron. And I know that if you give 18-year-old kids full autonomy to do anything they want to, they're going to take advantage of it, which is exactly what's happening right now because there's no parameters on this.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you what you just did. You basically said the Big Ten and the SEC is all that matters. That's it. And the irony that it was Boo Corrigan, who is affiliated with NC State, basically just signed his own death certificate because Florida State and Clemson will do everything in their power to get out of the ACC. And I'm not sure it won't happen within the next 12 months. I can tell you definitively there have been emails sent, there have been conversations had of we've got to raise $150 million to get out of this conference. They don't have our back, and we don't have theirs. Florida State and Clemson's the only thing keeping this conference afloat. Well, what'd you just do? Mm-hmm. You told them both. You can do everything in your power and still get left out. And we're going to a 12-team thing. That's fine. That's fine. We're going to a 12-team thing next year. You would be in. That's all well and good. It's psychological, brother. You just told the 2 big boys on the block that no matter how big you get, you're never going to be the baddest cat on the planet. And guess what that does to big, bad, type A personalities? Okay, well, let me go play with them because you're doing nothing for me. So the ACC, take a real good look at the Pac-12 because you're next.
Mm-hmm.
You're next. They lost their big boys, and everything fell apart in no time. No time. And now you've got a big boy on the block that you basically just said we have no oversight whatsoever. None. Pat McAfee said this 4 years ago. It's more true today than it was yesterday, and it'll be more true tomorrow than it was today. The NCAA is dying a slow, grim death. It's been 20, 30, 40 decisions over the course of time that have absolutely killed your product. It has absolutely killed people's ability to enjoy your product. Does it still get ratings? Absolutely, because it's football. And we could put a ficus in your place, and guess what? You'd still draw 15 million people a week. You know why? Because your product's that good.
Mm-hmm.
But the big boys with money, they're looking around going, man, this is a bad look. Man, Florida State fans are real angry. Man, those advertisers are probably not going to love this number because we could have 2 blowouts. We could be in the exact same spot we were last year. We look like morons.
Mm-hmm.
And if that happens, don't be shocked when the Ohio States and the Michigans and the Florida States and the Clemsons and the Texas and the Oklahoma and all of them band together and go, hey, remind me again why we need Ole Miss. Hey, remind me again why we need Mississippi State. Hey, remind me again why we need South Carolina. Hey, remind me again why we need Duke. Oh, yeah, that's right. We don't. We don't. We don't need them. There are 20 programs in this country that could form their own conference where they just played each other, and guess what? You wouldn't watch another Carolina football game for the rest of your life. You wouldn't watch another Memphis football game. You wouldn't watch another Houston Cougar football game. You wouldn't watch another BYU football game. You wouldn't watch another Oregon Duck or Oregon State Beaver game for the rest of your life. And you're set up for this. And all you just did was take one of the 10 power brokers and really, really upset them.
Mm-hmm.
And deservedly so. Because you didn't have the huevos to say Texas is not one of the 4 best teams in this country. They have one of the best wins. They have one of the best wins. I'm not disputing that. Oklahoma has one of the best wins too.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the rest of the resume, it just don't add up. But you had to get Alabama in there. And you're not wrong. Alabama deserved to be there.
I don't feel like it was just Alabama. You had to get the SEC in there, right? And you couldn't put 2 of them in. Because I'll be honest with you, after I watched the SEC championship game, I came away feeling like that was 2 of the best teams in the country.
And I can't tell you you're wrong.
And right now, I still feel that way. I still feel Michigan is 1. I feel like they are that dominant, and I get what you say about, and look great and the resume's not awesome. That's a pretty awesome team.
In the comments now that I'm here and I can look at things to make sure I don't say falafel real loud, I've been asked a couple times, what would my top 4 have been?
Mm-hmm.
Washington would have been my 1 because Washington earned it more than anybody else did.
Okay.
Michigan would have been my 2. Alabama would have been my 3. And Florida State would have been my 4. Georgia would have been my 5, and Texas would have been my 6.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way I can rationale that is Georgia had the opportunity to play their way in. Because had Georgia won, they would have been in.
No doubt.
Florida State would have played their way in. Michigan played their way in. Washington played their way in.
Yep.
Texas had a 14-week schedule where you had 1 impressive win and 1 conference title. End of message, repeat the line. But because that 1 win was over Alabama, and we cannot separate the transitive property, you had to be in.
Mm-hmm.
It was a weak move. It will be a weak move for the rest of my life. And when Texas gets beat 52-6 by Washington, don't be surprised when I really loudly tell you I told you so.
Yeah. As a Georgia fan, I feel like I owe you an apology, Jeremy. I really do. If we'd have just taken care of business, none of this would have happened.
I'm not mad at any of the teams. I said this in the stream
happened.
yesterday. I'm not mad at any of the teams in this.
You shouldn't be. You should be mad
I'm
at
not
the
mad
committee.
at Alabama. Alabama did exactly what they needed to.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't a very good team in week 1. They're a very good team right now. And that is basically what the committee said, is that we want to see who the teams are that are the best teams in the country. Well, here's the thing. Nobody with an IQ above a fish bowl thinks that the Texas Longhorns are better than Georgia. You don't. You don't. You might tell me you do, but you're lying. You are 100% lying. And now there's another part of this that I just have to attend to because it's really irked me all day long. Well, Florida State would get boat raced by Alabama or Texas or Washington. How do I say this delicately? No, they wouldn't. Washington has struggled in pass pro all year. Texas has struggled in pass pro all year. You know what those games would have been? Low scoring and not fun to watch. And if you don't think that played a role in it, I got a bridge to sell you.
Mm-hmm.
Florida State had 25 all-ACC selections. First team, second team, third team. Go back to Peter Warwick, go back to Bobby Bowden, go back to Chris Winkie, go back to Charlie Ward. How many Florida State teams have ever done that? 0. That's the answer. Not 1. Not nary a time. It's never happened. You just told one of the most talented teams in the history of the ACC. Did they blow people out? No. They didn't blow people out with Jordan Travis. They didn't blow people out after him. That doesn't change. That's one of the 4 most talented teams in the country. And I'd bet my house they're more talented than Texas.
Mm-hmm.
But thank God Texas scheduled Alabama. And you know what? Steve Sarkisian should send a really nice flower bouquet to Nick Saban. Because the only reason you're not playing in the Cotton Bowl is because of Nick Saban. You chose a good day to have a good day. Win with some grace. But you don't deserve to be here, and you know it just as well as I do.
You're in the Sportsocracy, and this is ESPN Asheville.